The Gospel of the Lord.
Good morning. Like I said, it's nice to be back. When I get a chance to go around the country, now even the world, speaking of God's mercy, every time I open up another passage to read or to listen to in the gospel, it so reflects that. I'm heading to Australia next, then to Poland, Chicago, Detroit, Dallas. So it's been a busy trip and going around the world talking about God's mercy. But we so see it right here today in this passage. There's so many things that tell us that. Now, first of all, if you listen to the words of the gospel, what is the vineyard? The vineyard is the nation of Israel, and its owner is God. The cultivators are the religious leaders. These are the Pharisees and the scribes in charge of that nation. Now, the messengers, who are they? They are the ones it says that are sent. But who are they? They're the prophets, sent by God, but often rejected. The Son, who came last, is Jesus himself. So here in this story, Jesus tells us the entire history of Israel and its doom. We better listen because we're on the same path. Now, what does this parable tell us about God? First of all, it tells God trusts us. We always talk about our trust in God, but God trusts us here. The owner of the vineyard entrusted it to the cultivators, right? He went away and left them with the task to do good, but not hover over them. I'm the director of the Association of Marian Helpers up in Stockbridge. I have 85 employees, and I'm Father Joseph, who's the director, and the first thing that I learned when I got up there was they told me, don't hover over us. Let us do our job, and that's been a beautiful grace for sure. Now, he went away. He trusted them. Secondly, it tells God is patient, right? He didn't come with vengeance when the messengers were ill-treated. In fact, he put up with man and all our sinning in ways that wants us to turn back to him. In other words, he's patient. But it then tells us about judgment, God's judgment. In the end, the master took the vineyard from the cultivators and gave it to someone else. God's sternest judgment is when he takes from us something he gave us and wanted us to do with it, and we dropped it. Every one of us Catholics was given a special gift at our baptism, the Catholic faith. But how many are dropping it, losing it, fumbling it, and then God takes it away? That we don't want to have happen. Now, it also tells us about us. First of all, we have privilege. The vineyard was equipped with everything: a hedge, wine press, a tower. God always gives us what we need to do any task, right? Tells us about our freedom. The master left the cultivators to do the task the way they wanted to do it. He is a good manager. When he allocates a task, he trusted the people to do it. It also, though, tells us about our sin. Now it gets scary. The cultivators carry out a rebellion against the master. Sin is the deliberate rebellion against God, taking our way over his. And then finally, what does this parable tell us about? It tells us about Jesus. It tells us of the claim of Jesus. It shows that Jesus is more important than the prophets. God first sent the prophets, then his son, just like the owner of the vineyard. They were his servants. He was the son. Then it tells of the sacrifice of Jesus. It makes clear that Jesus knew what lay ahead. The son knew that the others were killed, but yet he went anyway. That's what Jesus does. And he went willingly. So how does this all apply today? Well, Christ has established his vineyard. What is the vineyard? Now today, it's the church. And he put it into our hands. Christ pays us the ultimate compliment by entrusting us to spread the word through the church. He gave us the apostles and church magisterium, right? He didn't just give us a job to do, but he put the eternal salvation of other souls in our hands. You know, a demon once told John Vianney that the salvation of 80,000 souls, or I should say 80,000 souls avoided hell through his prayers and sufferings alone. So we are many co-redeemers. We do have that obligation. So in a way, this parable teaches us a lesson. And finally, you can look at this. In the Old Testament, they insulted Amos, one of the prophets. They beat Jeremiah, put him in prison. They killed Zechariah. What have we learned? Well, I guess it's this. If we're not careful, we're going to fall in the same way as Israel. Israel was given a huge grace, and they dropped it. We were too. In Europe and then in the United States, we were given the grace of our Christian faith. Now we're fumbling the football, I think. And God's mercy has remained. And that's what we're here to talk to you today, if you all can make it, after the Mass. And we're going to talk about the mercy of God and what you need to know about the year of mercy. You see, God told St. Faustina that he's extending this time of mercy. He told her that mankind's last hope for salvation is divine mercy. He said, this is it. All of salvation history culminates in God's divine mercy. He told St. Faustina that to prepare the world for my final coming, a spark will come from Poland to prepare the world for my final coming. Now, what do we think that spark is? Most theologians, most people in the church think it was John Paul II and divine mercy. In fact, John Paul II, when he canonized St. Faustina in 2000, he was already at the end of his pontificate. And you think of all the great things John Paul II did. He said publicly, when we were all there with him, I wasn't, but our religious community, John Paul II made a striking statement. He said, I believe the reason I was made Pope was to canonize St. Faustina and to institute the Feast of Divine Mercy. That's huge. So Jesus is telling us how important this is, because you see, while God's mercy is infinite, the time of mercy is not. We're living in borrowed time if you listen to all the signs. Now, we don't know when the end will be. We don't. End of the world could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, we don't know. But we know this. Jesus told St. Faustina to start preparing for his final coming. And that was back in the 1930s. And I found it interesting. You all heard of Sister Lucy from Fatima? Do you know she made a comment to a cardinal 30 years ago that stuck with me? She said 30 years ago to a cardinal that the final battle between God and Satan would be over marriage in the family. Over marriage in the family. And look what is happening in our world today over marriage in the family. Everybody wants to crush the Catholic Church. We are intolerant. We're bigots. We're discriminating. Please understand what the church is trying to teach. The church is not discriminating. The church is the last institution standing, trying to defend what God instituted. And I'll leave you with this. Why is the marriage and the family given by God the way it is? Here's why. When people say it doesn't matter what religion you are, it does matter. God has to be a Trinity. And I'm going to tell you why. God has to be a Trinity. Islam, first of all, Islam's not even a religion. Islam is a political ideology. Islam only spreads through the sword. Religions are only supposed to be spread through love and missionary work. Islam is not a religion. It's a political ideology. But Islam doesn't believe in the Trinity. Judaism doesn't believe in the Trinity. Buddhism doesn't believe in the Trinity. Mormonism doesn't believe in the Trinity. You see, it does matter what you are. And God has to be a Trinity. Why? And I'll finish with this. If you could think of one word that describes God, what is that one word? Love. Love. God is love. Now I ask you, we have one God, right? But how many persons? Okay, we have one God, right? 3 persons. Now, if I'm the only person in existence, if none of you existed, I am the only person in existence, nobody else, can there be love? No. In order for there to be love, you need a lover, you need the beloved, and you need the love between them. Now listen to this. In the Trinity, God the Father is the lover, God the Son is the beloved, and the love between them is so great, it generates a third person, the Holy Spirit. That's why the family is a mirror of the Trinity. You have the husband, the lover, the wife, the beloved, and only between them can the love be so great that it generates a third person, the child. That's why the church is trying to teach and have us understand the importance. And God's mercy fits into all of this. Yes, we are to love everyone. Never, ever, ever do we judge the person, but we must judge the action when actions are contrary to the will of God. And today we're going to say, through this little talk we're going to have in a few minutes, about the importance of God's mercy and what you need to know for the Jubilee year. And what is the promise that God makes to those on Divine Mercy Sunday if we do two simple things? He offers us an extraordinary promise if you do two simple things. What is that promise? And what are those two simple things you have to do? Stay for our talk after the Mass and we'll teach you. So God bless you all. Again, it's so nice to be back. And I hope to see you. I see several faces I recognize, but for all those I don't recognize, thank you for letting me come to be back again here at St. Mark's.